Trying new things here. New sports music to begin the show with. Hey everybody, it's Marky Bilson, your voice of choice for a new generation of Tri-City sports fans. The name of the program is Tri-City Sports Now, where we own the Tri-Cities on 1420 WEMB Sports Radio. I hear other people say, I don't know anything about hockey, and then I go and I see people all over the Tri-Cities wearing their Predators gear. There's this undercurrent. And, you heard about what happened on this day in sports history, Bob Cousy retiring. This is what Dan Patrick said. Bob Cousy retiring. What else occurred? They moved the goalpost back. Tampa Bay Buccaneers came into the league. They were awarded. You know what that did? That effectively destroyed the University of Tampa's athletic program. Powers that be, and the reason why the Buccaneers were granted a team, or Tampa was granted the Buccaneers, they had a stadium. It was what the Tampa Spartans were playing in. It was new, it was modern, all this. The Spartans, their last year of football competition, they were 6-5. They did things like, I believe, they won the Tangerine Bowl, I want to say, against a team with Jack Lambert. And then they destroyed the program and went D2. You want to know why? Oh, the Buccaneers are arriving. We'll never be able to compete with that. How's that for fatalist thinking? Yeah, without that, maybe the Tampa Spartans could have been the Miami Hurricanes in the 80s, so to speak. A college football dynasty. Yeah, I think about things like that. I'll also tell you, I researched that a lot when I was on the BFFF, the organization that brought back football to ETSU. I was a pretty active member in that. And did some research. Hey, it's Marky Bilson, as I said. Your voice of choice, new generation of Tri-City sports fans. And we're going to be talking to Alex Doherty, A to Z Sports Nashville at 1:15. What went wrong with the Preds? Now, we were supposed to do that yesterday. He got tied up in a meeting somehow. So we're going to talk to him here a couple days late. But it comes after a pretty good playoff series that concluded and had another local team. In fact, we could argue that it had two local teams if, depending on your status. What is local? Few, when they think of Washington, D.C., think of the Tri-Cities, Tennessee area. However, I am remembering the days when the Redskins were shown every week on WJHL. Yeah, that's another generation ago, but I do remember that. And so I started thinking, the Capitals in that era, they were the local hockey team. Didn't have that much of a following, certainly not like the Hurricanes. But what about the Hurricanes? Yeah. Defeating the Caps in 7 games and doing it extremely dramatically, making a statement. What can you say? Look, upsets make playoffs compelling. But I'm not sure seeing all 4 division champs fall in the first round of the NHL playoffs make the next 3 rounds as compelling as they could be. Although, maybe they will be. And I'm going to tell you why. Because we won't be asking, if the Tampa Bay Lightning are the NHL's greatest team ever, because they won 62 games, and if they went on, after taking the league record, tying with the Red Wings, actually, back in the 90s, but tying that record and then going on to win the Stanley Cup, high scoring, Steven Stamkos was the second leading scorer on the team. Come on. Nikita Kucherov scored 128 points. That's the most points any player has scored since Mario Lemieux. By the way, you want to talk about what happened in sports history? 30 years ago today, Mario Lemieux scored 8 points in a playoff game. Penguins defeated the Flyers 10-7. It was just, who does that? That was his year where a lot of people think was the greatest season a hockey player ever had, when Lemieux had 199 points. And although it didn't break Wayne Gretzky's mark of 216, he was doing it with a lot less talent around him. So, we won't be asking, though, if the Lightning are the best team ever. Of course, we won't be following the Predators. They won't be bringing a title to Tennessee this year. There's only one 100-point scorer left in the playoffs. In fact, that's Brad Marchand. And so the star power, Kucherov, like I talked about, Sidney Crosby, Alexander Ovechkin, they're all out. But you know what? I don't think it was a bad thing when Brock McGinn sent Ovechkin's defending Stanley Cup champs home last night when he scored a goal halfway into the second overtime period to give the Canes a 4-3 victory and a spot in the second round of the playoffs. And therefore, oh, yay, Hurricanes, home team, they playing right. Necessarily that. No. Because now we have an image of that series that's something different than Ovechkin knocking out Andrei Svechnikov in the second game. And that image was what was going to hurt hockey. I've told this story before. I remember once making a reference when Mario Lemieux was still an active player. I just mentioned his name, someone I was working for at the time around here. Who's that? This person also knew who Satchel Paige was. Well, not sports illiterate. Oh, Mario Lemieux is a great hockey player. Oh, all I know about hockey is they fight. They call soccer the beautiful game, but you could, make that argument about so many other sports. And frankly, I think that baseball, as well as hockey, are more beautiful games. What was it that Dickie Dunn said in Slapshot? The Chiefs moving across the milky white ice was poetry in motion. Boy, that's some good writing, Dickie. You remember that? But there was, an artistic form to the NHL, back and forth, but going faster than basketball. And certainly the exotic nature of playing on ice. These are some of the reasons I really like the sport. It's the rock and roll sport, which I think can carry the NHL forward. And I'll talk a little bit why on this, but the image now of that Canes Cap series is not Ovechkin knocking out Svechnikov. It is Brock McGinn diving to block a shot in front of the net behind a goalie just as regulation was ending, forcing OT, and then he only scored 10 goals all year long. McGinn is the real hero. He's the MVP as he scores the game winner halfway through the second period. Now, by the way, take a look sometime at a picture of Brad McGinn. Then take a look at Alexander Ovechkin, and then get back to me. Ugly never wins, and ugly did not win Caps and Canes. The Canes came back in this series that Svechnikov, they were down 2-0 and then 3-2 after a 6-0 loss. And for that matter, entered into the third period on the road, trailing in the seventh game, and then they came back to win. It's nothing short of remarkable. And to do it against the defending Stanley Cup and current Metropolitan Division champ is also impressive, though, hockey playoffs I talk about, all the division winners went down, and yeah, I do sort of say, on that. But remember, Caps only had 5 more points than the Canes this year. 2 more victories during the whole year. Canes are on their way up. Caps, they hope to be on their way up. They won a cup last year. I'm not going to write them off for the future, but yeah, Canes are on their way up. And what they really did is they beat a bully. Because the NHL remains Neanderthals by not eliminating fighting altogether, as it is on so many levels of the sport. Now, Gary Bettman has no problem eliminating many traditions. Ties, overtimes with a full contingency of skaters, the 2-line pass. So why does he insist on keeping perhaps the most barbaric element in all of sports when it sullies the reputation of the game and now means a much-needed showcase player, Svechnikov, who had 20 goals this year and was the first-round pick of the Canes in last year's draft, he's on the shelf for 5 games, maybe even more, instead of on the ice. How does that help hockey? Canes' victory may have caused us to wonder why the NHL had a regular season in the first place, because, 5 of the top seeds went down, all the division winners. That's never happened before. I get it. But with the playoffs expanding in every sport, we wonder that already. Look, we talk a lot of college football. Why is college football so popular? Well, I'm going to tell you this. It's got the most exclusive regular season. And to me, that's a big reason why 80,000 fans go to college football games and they don't go in those numbers to other sports, because the regular season still means something. What Carolina's victory, though, does, getting back to the original point, hopefully it establishes a new era. One where you got to skate your way to victory instead of slug. One where a frisky young colt of a franchise is vanquished. A Palooka-type champ that celebrated winning the Stanley Cup last year by getting rid of their coach. Canes had 112 fewer penalty minutes than the Caps did this season. They were called for 4 fewer penalty minutes in this series. And that's saying something, since Svechnikov's injuries and lopsided games lend themselves to cheap shots on the ice. Now, here's the deal. I will say with the AAF debacle, maybe you don't want to see Thomas Dundon win the Stanley Cup, but the AAF was also set up to fail with its ownership structure. The AAF also is irrelevant to the NHL. What is relevant? Good guys won. 5 of the 10 teams called for the fewest penalty minutes in the NHL this season are still playing, whereas the Bolts, who spent the second most time in the box this year, were swept. Now, if hockey's to grow, I think it can. Lacks a political entity, so everybody's welcome. It's fast-paced, it has players with charisma, and it has the potential to boom. So perhaps the Canes' victory sends the message that one cannot punch their way to a title anymore. That would be the best thing for the sport. I'm Marky Bilson, NFL Draft, talking about it next.
Opening for third store this Saturday, the 27th, Wishon Auto, 4120 Bristol Highway, right across from